Despite a huge, well-publicised campaign to leave the EU in the lead-up to the referendum in 2016, many in the UK thought it could never happen. And the result came as a shock to many. Without information about what would happen next, fear, frustration and anger had time to brew. Hate crimes rose to a record high in the months after the referendum, with Eastern Europeans targeted in particular. People marched in the streets to protest the surge in anti-immigrant sentiment we still can see today, and Britons and Europeans alike expressed anger and fear about what Brexit had taken from them. Since Brexit, more Europeans have left the UK than have arrived. And after long years of uncertainty, the UK finally launched the EU settlement scheme in 2019, offering a simplified path to permanent residency for Europeans who had lived in the UK for at least 5 years, and pre-settled status for those who'd arrived more recently, but still before the deadline. Since then, the Home Office has received 6 million applications, and about 17% of these are duplicates from people who were initially rejected, as well as those moving from pre-settled status to settled status once they met the 5-year threshold. Under the settlement scheme, Europeans receive nearly the same rights they had before Brexit. The main difference now is that if they leave the UK for 5 years, they will have to start over as immigrants if they wish to return. For many, the scheme is not enough to feel secure. After all, critics say the rules have changed once, so what's to prevent them from changing again? As a result, since Brexit, 337,000 EU citizens have gone further and became British citizens. Also called naturalization, this is the only way to gain full, irrefutable rights. But for many who have gone down this route, their new nationality has come with a side of some very complicated feelings. The traditional view of naturalization, the process by which an immigrant becomes a full citizen, is that it's the final step in the journey to integration. But in the case of Brexit and Europeans in the UK, the opposite happened. And there are some experts that really did some research about this after Brexit. People hadn't felt the need to naturalize because they felt safe and comfortable as Europeans in Britain. And now they were forced to naturalize to defend themselves. The act of naturalization therefore made people feel less British, or at least less included in the UK, rather than more. Instead of citizenship being a celebration of belonging, many Europeans have naturalized in a state of resentment and have felt even like they are doing it under duress. In interviews with Europeans, the researchers have found a complete lack of trust in the British state. And this distrust is often directed towards the settlement scheme, new rights created by the same government that took the old ones away. Because history may plausibly repeat itself, the only guarantee is citizenship. And it's said that the experts recommend citizenship to anyone who can get it. But there is still a strong sense of pain associated with Brexit and of this issue still being unresolved. The EU began in the form of the European Coal and Steel Community, founded in 1951 by Belgium, West Germany, France, Italy, Luxembourg, and the Netherlands, all Western European countries. And this was reformed into the European Economic Community in 1957 and the European Union in 1993. By 1995, there were 15 members covering most of Western Europe, including the UK, which joined in 1973. Many citizens of other EU countries who lived in the UK never really considered themselves immigrants, but rather European citizens moving freely, living out the dream of the great European family. And the referendum was a particular shock to them. Before Brexit, people from Western Europe hardly ever bothered to naturalize. But people from the newer member states of the EU, specifically the 11 Eastern European states that joined in the 2000s, never shared this sense of entitlement. With Eastern and Central Europeans, it's a different story, especially people from Poland who had been naturalizing well before Brexit. Part of this difference may stem from Eastern Europeans' experience of growing up with less political stability, leaving them less trusting of rules and promises. But sections of the UK press have also repeatedly targeted immigrants from Eastern Europe since the 2000s for all sorts of societal ills, rising knife crime in London and unemployment, for example. They had already been faced with a hostile environment as migrants. They had seen the threats from the tabloids, the front pages about the invasion we still heard about from Suella Braverman, for example. Western Europeans did not have to deal with such hostility, and it created a divide. And some of the Western Europeans said that they have been scolded for worrying about Brexit. And one was told, it's not you they want to get rid of, this is about the Eastern Europeans. But no matter which country they come from, feeling compelled to naturalize or formally settle has damaged Europeans' sense of belonging in the UK. This hostile immigration policy is having a big effect on the connection that people feel to their British identity. For example, Andrea Dumitrash, the interim co-CEO of the 3 Million, that's a campaign group for EU citizens in Britain, feels that way. And while settlement largely restores pre-Brexit rights, it has introduced the potential for friction at the border. And this is arguably part of the government's stated goal of creating a hostile environment for immigrants. People are indeed finding it stressful and a reminder of their, let's say, lesser status in the UK. Instead of having a physical card or visa stamp, people in the UK under the settlement scheme are placed in a digital system, which is prone to glitches. The digital system is not as reliable as it should be. It can cause delays at the border, and I know from friends that this really happens. Settlement is also linked to passports, so if years later people renew their European passport but have forgotten to update the UK Home Office, they may be flagged at the border and questioned until their status can be verified. And that is a scary situation, to be questioned whether you have the right to come home. And I have a lot of friends, and so I know how they would feel. And a lot went through the naturalization process, especially when they had children, because they didn't want to be separated from their family, because they have different queues at the border when they come back home to the UK. To be sure, Europeans in Britain who have secured dual citizenship can move freely once again, while Britain's lost their EU rights after Brexit. In a way, the EU British dual citizens are pretty much back where they started, except now with a blue British passport in hand and a lot of mixed feelings about the country that they indeed call home. The EU diaspora is a product of Brexit, and even the European identity among the new citizens got strengthened there, and there's clearly an interest in retaining their attachment to Europe. In the mandatory citizenship ceremony, by the way, newly naturalized Britons pledge allegiance to the monarch and swear their loyalty to the UK, but with those feelings in the background. So it's definitely not the kind of feeling that you would want. You would want to be welcome in your new country of that you belong to, but it is still an issue. But completely without issues, except some bugs, is what I'm experiencing on my new channel. You might have seen the banner up there recently. It's total fun, and if you have any interest in Star Trek, I suggest you come by and have a visit. Maybe you get attracted to the game as well. I really like playing that. That was my escape from politics, so to speak. Until a good friend of mine got the brilliant idea that I have to make videos on that one, because I'm explaining so much to our alliance members anyway. But nevertheless, if you want to see something else about the UK, the next video is right here in the end screen. I'll see you there. I'll be back.